Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, and warm welcome to a new member.
You.
Congratulations and welcome to the club. I will cover what Dave rightly described as the most complex and challenging role on the committee, but let me give it some context first, just to set the scene for this evening's description of committee roles. We don't just show up here and suddenly have a meeting. It takes a lot of preparation, and the club itself requires a bit of organization. There's guidance for that. There's guidance for how the club can be structured and the roles that can be taken by the members of the club to help organize the club, and that's the club committee. Those roles are described in the club leadership handbook. It's called a handbook for a reason. It's not the club leadership standard or policy, it's a handbook. It's really good guidance, and by following that guidance, a club has a pretty good guarantee of succeeding. If a club wants to be called a Toastmasters club, it should take some guidance from that club leadership handbook. A public speaking club doesn't have to be a Toastmasters club. There's a club in Bournemouth called Bournemouth Speakers. I think at one point they were a Toastmasters club, and I think at one point they decided, you know what, they want to do something that's different from Toastmasters. But here you've got Ferndown Speakers, and across town there's Hallmark Speakers, and they're Toastmasters clubs. So they follow some guidance from Toastmasters. They comply with some of the standards and some of the ways of Toastmasters. And the way that the committee functions is part of that standard. We'll hear about each of the committee roles, and we'll hear about President immediately following my description of Vice President of Education. Let me describe Vice President of Education as it is described in the Club Leadership Handbook, as well as offering some variations that I've seen over the past 20 years on how that role can be assumed. The Club Leadership Handbook expects the Vice President of Education to have 4 areas of responsibility. The first is to be the administrator of EasySpeak and set up, that's an online system to set up meetings, and to set up those meetings, and to a certain extent, populate those meetings. The second is to administrate Basecamp, which is on the Toastmasters.org website. It's where Pathways information is found, and they help confirm that members are progressing through Pathways. The third is to lead the club's mentoring program. And the fourth is to organize club contests. So let me go into those 4 in a bit more depth and also offer some variations that are available. First, about running EasySpeak. Ideally, there should be some templates in there on that online system so that it's fairly simple for the Vice President of Education to click a template and they've got an empty template to fill with the roles. They can get some help with those templates. There could be someone in the club who's the IT support person and who gets to know those systems in a bit of depth of knowledge and might even maintain that role of IT support year after year as the rest of the committee rotates year after year. But ultimately, somebody under the guidance and accountability of the Vice President of Education has those templates ready so that the Vice President of Education can select one for the meetings that are coming up, and then they've got all the roles that are necessary for that meeting. Then it's time to select people to populate those roles. And that's where the real value of the Vice President of Education comes in, because that VPE should have kind of a sense of how everyone's doing on their journey in Toastmasters, kind of knows the Vice President of Education can access the roles that the members have previously done, can access the requests that the members have made for speeches. And so they get a sense of, okay, meeting coming up, I kind of know who's the more experienced members for the complicated roles, who are the less experienced members for the simpler roles, who's requested speeches so I can plop them in for speeches in the meeting and build up the agenda so it's ready for the meeting. Some clubs give the VPE some help in populating the roles as well. If they've got experienced people who can act as Toastmaster of the evening, might be somebody who's been a VPE before. You can hand over or delegate some of that meeting preparation to them. You can say to the Toastmaster of the evening as VPE, I've chosen a template. I encourage you to reach out to the members and get those roles filled. So that's some variations on how they can use Easy Speak and get the regular meetings set up. The second accountability that I was talking about was administrating Basecamp in Pathways, another online system. And that's an online system that members use to select what they want to be doing in Toastmasters, to work through their projects, and ultimately to say that they've finished their levels. But we don't self-report that. We can't promote ourselves to the next level in Toastmasters. We need verification, and that's what the Vice President of Education is doing. I just did that today. I'm not Vice President of Education. I'm somebody who finished the level, I think. I self-reported it today in Basecamp, and the Vice President of Education should have an email now that says, John Schell said that he finished level 3 of motivational strategies. Can you just check and confirm? And so the VPE can look in Easy Speak and say, oh yeah, he did all those roles. He gave all those speeches. Yep, tick, done. Validates that that member has progressed and confirm it in Basecamp, and the member knows that they can move on to the next level. Here's another aspect of Vice President of Education that can also get some help because other committee members have access to Basecamp. The president also has access to Basecamp, and so does the club secretary. So there's some coverage there if the VP is on a holiday, or if they want to agree as a committee to delegate that role to one of those other members, they have the opportunity to fulfill those activities in Basecamp as well. The third responsibility that I mentioned was organizing club contests. And perhaps we'll get to the point at some point in this club where we have club contests as well. It's a great opportunity for clubs to really show off, to see the benchmark of quality, and to see who can progress to the next level of contests. Again, it's the club leadership handbook that offers the guidance that the VPE should be the one who's responsible for setting up club contests. And certainly they do that in Easy Speak, but usually you have a role called contest chair. And usually that contest chair is the one who actually gets from 0 to club contest by organizing roles, volunteers, speakers, participants, and structuring the club contest. But according to the handbook, it's the VP ultimately accountable for that. And in the fourth, running the mentoring program. Each club should have a mentoring program, and that's an opportunity to go beyond evaluations. We love our evaluations in Toastmasters. Everyone who participates in Toastmasters typically has an evaluator who gives them feedback, and that's why we're all here, is to learn, to get that instantaneous feedback, and to progress. In addition to that, there's another layer of feedback that we can get. It's someone who's allocated, assigned to us longer term, not just for one role in one meeting, but maybe for a few months, maybe for a few speeches, maybe to just give us enough time so that we get a consistent viewpoint of our development and get that feedback and know that we can reach out to someone. A large club has a pool of mentors that's available for everyone in the club. And that requires a little bit of coordination. It requires someone to say, okay, I know that every member who wants a mentor can find one. I know that I know who all the mentors are. I know what their strengths are, and I can coordinate that program so those mentors can succeed in providing that value to the members. That coordinator, according to the handbook, is the Vice President of Education. But I've seen some clubs where they create a new role in the committee called Vice President of Mentoring. If it's a large club that has a lot of mentors and really want to succeed in making that a dynamic program, they can delegate that role. So those are the 4 areas of responsibility for VPE. I can't promise it, but I think that that will be the longest explanation you're going to hear tonight for a committee role, because that really is quite an important role that has a lot of responsibility. But now we'll hear from the other committee roles.